to truly heal your problems, you have to heal the stress. To heal the stress, you have to heal the memory. And they point out that your brain does not know the difference between reliving an experience and experiencing an experience for the first time. I'm going to say this again because I don't know if it really hits people. This is why repetitive thoughts can be so harmful. Your brain does not know the difference between you remembering a traumatic event and a traumatic event taking place for the first time. So that is why we have a physical response in our body that comes up when we still have a grievance. We're remembering on a cellular level. They did studies at Northwestern and Stanford, and they talk about it in the healing code that your body literally cannot tell the difference. Welcome to the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast, where you master your mind and coach your own comeback. You are the hero. You are the guide, and you will learn to architect your life from the inside. I'm your host, Bretagne Stowe, joined by my sister and co-host, Anike Wilder. Enjoy the show.
So, Bretagne, we're kind of wrapping up our failure series. I can't believe it's already like our 5th episode talking about failure. And we've talked about failure by omission, failure by commission, failure from schools, and failure in childhood. But I want to take a deep dive into failure from other people, like close to us, when someone fails you. So do you have things that come to mind when I say who has failed you in your life?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about people who have failed me was my parents. And I encourage our listeners as they're listening to also start to reflect who they feel like has failed them. My parents, my significant other, my sisters, my boss, all of them, all of the above. Honestly, I have felt like have failed me at one point or another. And I don't feel that way now, but definitely at different times in my life, I felt completely let down, completely failed by people that I trusted and I kept in my inner circle. And so I'd love to share a little bit about my parents and why I felt failed by them. I think that would be a great example.
Yeah, I would love to hear that, and also kind of tell me what that feels like before you get into how your parents failed you. Like what does it feel like? Is it expectations that weren't met? Is it like heartbroken? Is it, abandonment? Like what does the failure feel like when your parents fail you?
Yeah, all of the above. Abandonment, I'd say, is one of the biggest. You feel abandoned. Though my parents did not give me up for adoption, they kept all 5 of us kids together, but I felt completely unsupported, unseen. I felt abandoned. I felt heartbroken. I felt undervalued. And in a lot of ways, I no longer felt love from my parents.
Okay. And do you have a specific situation? This sounds like a lot of situations, a lot of scenarios, a lot of parts of your childhood and your upbringing, and even probably in the recent years in your adulthood. But what comes to your mind specifically?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind, and you'll remember this because you're my sister, you were there, but we lived in Germany, in Heidelberg, Germany, and we were doing well. This family of 7, all 5 of us siblings getting along, thriving in our community, in school, in our friend groups, in our church groups, even. And then my dad told us we were leaving. And we were not just leaving Heidelberg, we were leaving an entire continent that we called home. And we're coming back stateside and to North Carolina, to Fayetteville, North Carolina. Now, if you know Fayetteville, North Carolina, you know that it is also known by another name. We won't say that here, but it does go by another name because it's a very hard place to live. And I went from being a star athlete and a straight A student, sophomore class president, homecoming queen. I was on the top of my game in literally every aspect, the best shape of my life, had finally lost all that hormone baby weight, was doing so incredibly well. And then we moved to a town where the culture was completely different. The vibe was different. The people were different. The school system was awful. And I started to fall. I started to crumble. I started to kind of lose who I was. And I remember asking my parents for help and support. And what I didn't realize at the time was they were also struggling, and all my siblings were struggling. But at the time, I felt so abandoned. And I quickly looked to outside sources to fill that void. I got in with the wrong crowd. I dated horrible people, abusive individuals. I got into drugs, and I ended up getting expelled my senior year of high school. And we'll go into that story another day. But my life started to completely crumble, and I felt I had no support system. I felt like my parents had failed me. When they stayed in Germany so that my older brother could graduate, he got to have that. And so that was another layer, is I was comparing myself that, oh, you showed up for my brother. He got to stay in Germany, but I wasn't allowed. And I held that against my parents, and I allowed it to consume me. Again, I don't feel that way anymore, but that is a very deep and real example of my parents failing me.
Yeah. And maybe there are people who've had similar situations where they've had their whole life in a certain place where they grew up and they were completely uprooted and their whole life changed. And I think Britannia downplayed it a little bit. I mean, she went to 7 proms,
Six.
6 proms. Oh my gosh. 6 proms, homecoming queen, very popular, amazing friends, an amazing school, to a place where bullying was on the rise. We became a minority. We were like one of like 5 white families in the school. I don't know if that's an exaggeration, but it definitely, we were a minority. And which was, gave us insights about what it feels like to be a minority, which is good. We could talk about another time. But then it's just a totally flipped your world upside down. It was a totally different environment. We had to wear clear backpacks to go through metal detectors in the school because of the crime being so bad. I remember getting pushed up against the wall when somebody was fighting, like pulling off your earrings type of fight. And like there was so much, there was a fight every single day at this school. And I was in the middle school when you were in high school, but it was bad. It was not good. And so I could see how you felt completely abandoned, left behind, uprooted. I could see how that could be such a problem with an important part of your life. High school, it doesn't really mean a lot now, but in the moment, high school is pivotal for most people's lives. It also can be a way to shape someone for the rest of their lives. It's like it has a lot of weight, but it also doesn't have a lot of weight, you know?
Yeah. I feel like that's a lot of things in life, right? That duality of, it is everything and it is nothing at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. But you said you felt failed by your parents, but you don't feel that way anymore, which sounds to me like you've forgiven them. Is that right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think that getting into forgiveness would be a great way to explain how you can get over when someone has failed you. It's important to note that the people who fail you don't do it intentionally. Okay, so we often have this idea that someone has gone out of their way to make your life harder or to neglect you or abandon you or whatever it may be. But the truth is, most people are good and try to do good and try to show up and try to keep the promises that they've made. And so we have to keep in mind the story that we're telling ourselves. So before I get into forgiveness, I want to just remind our listeners, don't turn this off. I know that forgiveness can be triggering. I have taught several forgiveness workshops, and there is always one person who just says, I just don't like the word. I don't believe in it. It triggers me. I feel some kind of way. And that's okay. That's okay. And I want to acknowledge that that is normal. If saying the word forgiveness brings up some feelings because of the trauma that you have experienced, that's okay. Please just try to listen because it's important to know. And I'm going to start here what the difference is between what forgiveness is and what it is not. Forgiveness is not condoning, it is not forgetting, it is not reconciliation, it is not sweeping under the rug, it is not allowing it to just roll off your back and move on as if it didn't make an impact. What it is a choice, and it's hard work, but it is a choice to forgive so that you can no longer carry that weight. Forgiveness is not for anyone else, but for yourself. So now that we know what forgiveness is, how do you know if you need to forgive someone? Let me ask you, Anike, what do you think the signs are that you maybe are holding a grievance and you need to forgive?
Probably it's affecting my life. I'm spending way too much time thinking about it, and it's infiltrating my other relationships. It's infiltrating my business. I'm bothered when I'm thinking about that person, which then makes me like a grumpy mom or a grumpy wife, when really I'm holding on to something that I haven't dealt with. And I'm the first to say I don't say I hold grudges, but I definitely don't forgive as quickly as I'd like. I say I do. I'm like, oh, I'm so quick to forgive, especially after a good night's rest. But really, when I haven't forgiven, it's when it's affecting me with my day to day. Like it's taking up my thoughts, it's taking up my emotions, and it's affecting my relationships.
That is a perfect example of the signs to know if you have something that you need to let go of. And that's called a grievance. And we form grievances when we have our expectations not met, when we feel abandoned, right? When we felt heartbroken or double crossed, completely let down. I mean, there are some really heavy things that, someone could have murdered your brother or you've been raped. There are some really big things that happen. And so it's very understandable to form these grievances, which is an emotional journey and a scarring almost on your life. But it doesn't matter if it is as big as death or rape or crime, or as small as someone giving you a dirty look or you not getting a job. They all impact us. And even if they feel small, if it's affecting your daily life, it's affecting your work, it's affecting the way you show up in your life, you have a grievance. And so to help identify that, I always encourage people to ask yourself, when you think about something, do you just think it up here? Do you just, feel it up in your brain? Or are you also feeling it in your body? Because our bodies respond and our bodies remember. There is a book that I came across, gosh, I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago, and it's called The Healing Code. Excellent book. And it is written by Alex Lloyd, The Healing Code. And I found it by accident. I was just going through a used bookshop and discovered it and was called to it. And I read it on a plane and in a few days, like it changed my life. And in this book, The Healing Code, so go out, get this book, they talk about how to truly heal your problems, you have to heal the stress. To heal the stress, you have to heal the memory. And they point out that your brain does not know the difference between reliving an experience and experiencing an experience for the first time. I'm going to say this again because I don't know if it really hits people. This is why repetitive thoughts can be so harmful. Your brain does not know the difference between you remembering a traumatic event and a traumatic event taking place for the first time. So that is why we have a physical response in our body that comes up when we still have a grievance. We're remembering on a cellular level. They did studies at Northwestern and Stanford, and they talk about it in the healing code that your body literally cannot tell the difference.
Wow.
So, Annika, uh, I want to ask you, when you have felt a grievance, where have you felt it in your body in the past? Or if you're dealing with something right now?
Probably my chest would be the most common answer. That's something that I hear a lot when it comes to forgiveness and grudges when I coach people, and I think that's the same for me. It's like a stress, and stress I feel in my chest a lot. And then I think also like the weight of it in my shoulders, but also women carry a lot of stress in their shoulders and hips, and sometimes it's hard to identify exactly what's causing that because it could be accumulation of it. So I would say the one that, at least for me, that I would notice would be my chest, but the ones that I might not notice because it's there all the time are my shoulders and hips.
That's a really good point. You don't notice it because it's there all the time. It reminds me of, do you remember John, by the way?
Yeah.
And John, by the way, used to talk about a backpack. And
Mm-hmm.
you are carrying these bricks, you get used to the weight of
Mm-hmm.
these bricks.
Yeah.
And once you realize that you can take a brick out, you're lighter. And it's almost confusing like, oh, I can let go of this and I can be lighter. Sometimes we don't know when we are carrying around this hurt and this pain and this weight. So maybe we should jump into what the steps of forgiveness are.
Yeah, I would love to hear it.
Okay, so the phases. First, it starts with acknowledgement. That's like anything in our life, right? It seems so simple, but just acknowledge that you're feeling hurt. Acknowledge that it is more than just a small a feeling, that it's actually impacting you, like you said, shows up in your body. Maybe it's deterring you from your work or showing up the way you want in your life. Maybe you're not the person you used to be after this event happened. So just acknowledge first and then understand the situation and your role in the story. I blamed my parents for ruining my life. And while they did move me, and while they had a lot going on, it was not an intentional diss on Britannia, right? The whole family had to deal with this move and this hardship. And so acknowledge if you're going into, victimhood and how you chose to respond in the situation. Often when we need to forgive someone else in a situation, we also need to forgive ourselves. So understand that role that you need to play. And then to let go of the grudge, this takes time, but you do have to actionably choose to let it go. And that can be as simple as when your feelings arise, you go, I'm letting that go. I'm not allowing that to affect me anymore. It doesn't have to be, I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about that. It can be, I am choosing not to let that have weight anymore. And just saying that and moving your body will help you let go of that grudge.
Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean moving your body?
Oh, okay. All right. Gosh, we could get into
Because
this.
you just graze past that. You say letting
Okay.
go of moving your body. Okay, next. But what is
Okay. Okay.
does
Okay.
that mean like we're doing a dance? Does it mean running? Does it mean breathing? What do you mean?
Yes, sometimes all of those things, all of
Okay.
the above. So, Tony Robbins talks about this a lot, right? Change your physiology, change your life. I have a really great example of this. I was actually in a hypnobirthing class, and a gentleman was so deep under hypnotism, he could not get out of it. We clapped, we yelled, we shook him. He could not get out of being hypnotized.
Oh my gosh.
And he was such in a deep state. Yeah, it's kind of scary and crazy, right? But he was in such a deep state. And so I said, we have to change his body. We have to get him to move. Otherwise, his mind won't know to move. And so the teacher was like, oh, yeah, maybe we should lay him down. And so we go up behind him after we have clapped and shook and done sternum rubs and done all the things that we need to do to try to wake this guy up. And all we did was go behind him and lift him up, physically create movement in his body. And immediately he woke up. Immediately he woke up and looked around like we were crazy. I was like, what are you guys doing around me? But it's such a simple thing. So changing your physiology, it's like those power poses when you are, about to go into a presentation and you do the Wonder Woman or the V. When you are in these positions, you have created movement and change in your body when you sit up straight versus slouching. Dancing, breathing, deep breath. Just you think, oh, it's just breath work, but actually bringing your breath into your abdomen, expanding through your lungs and all your organs, you're creating real change in your body. And by creating that change physically and on a cellular level, you will be changing your mindset and you will be able to change your mind about something.
Okay. So you're saying incorporating physical movement in order to physically let go of that energy of a grudge.
Yes. I have taught yoga for several years, and people who are new to yoga, who avoid yoga, it's often because they start to feel something during yoga. And I've had several students who say, I just get angry when I'm doing yoga. I'm like, yeah, because you have some stuff to move through and it's not going to be comfortable. And to let go, you have to feel. You have to feel it. I'm sorry. There is no way around it. You have to feel the emotion to let it go. Yeah. So, physically moving your body will help you with that. And then communicating forgiveness, if it is relevant, if it is appropriate, if it is safe, being able to communicate that. Sometimes it's easier to just communicate that outwardly by yourself. Maybe it's not safe. Maybe it's someone who is in prison or will actually cause you harm if you're in front of them. Yeah, don't go and communicate your forgiveness, but you can still have the act of communication on your own and then set some boundaries. So we talk about how, oh, we should have seen the red flags or what I could have done. You can't set boundaries and reflect on how you could have handled the situation better until you've moved through all those other steps. So I think it's really important that you don't jump to, okay, how can I learn from this if you haven't felt it, if you haven't moved through it, and then allowing yourself to have some self-care. Just because it's a choice doesn't mean it's easy. A lot of people make a lot of choices every day. It does not make it easy. You have to will yourself through it, and taking time to process the process of forgiveness, knowing that it's not a one and done. It will take years. Sometimes it may take a lifetime. For others, it might take months or weeks or whatever the grievance is. So just be patient with yourself as you move through those steps of forgiveness.
I love that. And it just makes you want to start singing, let it go, let it go.
Yeah, sing it, please. Yeah, let it go. Because the weight is so heavy. We don't always know what that brick is that we're carrying in our backpack. We're just so used to carrying that weight on our back, our shoulders, our hips. And when you start to address this, you start to notice you actually feel lighter. So I say, let's jump into some, coaching segments and maybe help some individuals work through some forgiveness. What do you say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what it's all about. So we're not your coaches. You're coaching yourself. That's what we're empowering women to do. And so if you want to get yourself unstuck from any situation, that's what this podcast is all about. So how can somebody coach themselves for free, unlimited resources, because it's for themselves, from themselves, when it comes to when someone failed them and needing to forgive that person, that they're just holding on, they don't want to do it, they don't have will to do it. I mean, how do you coach yourself through that?
Yeah, going through the steps of forgiveness, let's take us all the way back to the top, right? You're not going to get through all, 7 steps on the first day. So let's talk about acknowledgement of the hurt. So let's ask ourselves, what do I need to forgive? What comes up when you ask yourself, when you're honest with yourself, who do I need to forgive? Or what emotions come up when I think of the word forgiveness? What faces populate my mind? What memories start to show up? First, allow yourself to feel that. Then, once you go there, allow yourself to sit, and it's uncomfortable. Allow yourself to sit in that memory and notice where it comes up in your body. It's really important to be able to acknowledge where you're feeling it in your body, because when you are doing your movement, when you are working through the steps of forgiveness, you want to make sure you're intentional about getting that out. Which brings me to, I talked about the healing code, but Anike, you also discovered something similar but different called the emotion code. And I think the coaching segment is a perfect time for you to talk about it.
Yes, the emotion code is also something that anyone can do for free. I also have the book. You can buy this book, bookstores, Amazon, wherever, but there's a chart that you can also Google. And this chart has a couple columns, and it lists all these different emotions that could be trapped in your body. And it's like, and I'll just give an example, but anxiety, betrayal, abandonment, sorrow, rejection, guilt, hatred, resentment, fear, peeved, humiliation, failure, hopelessness, out of control, heartache, insecurity. It goes on. There's a massive list of emotions, and then it correlates with where those are trapped in your body. Because in traditional Chinese medicine, if you don't release these emotions, they are harvested into your organs. So fear example could be like in the gallbladder. Anger could be in the liver. So if you have knee issues, it means you're holding on to something in regards to your parents. And so it's so cool. There's like a whole map of what's going on in your emotional body with your physical body. So what you do is you muscle test, and I can explain what muscle testing is, but you muscle test to figure out which trapped emotions you have. And muscle testing is powerful because it is telling you in a conscious way what is trapped subconsciously. So you could do it by putting your arm out and resisting and having another person like push down your arm, and down would be a negative, strong would be a positive. Or what I like to do, and you would have to watch this on video for those that are listening, but if you use your finger, like putting a finger inside of two fingers, trying like putting your index finger and your thumb together, pressing it together, and you could do this, Britannia, and trying to resist your other hand. It's hard to explain without showing, but try to resist it going through. And so before you try it, this is going to be yes. This is what my yes looks like, because this is my intention. Other people do it backwards, but my yes is strong, meaning my finger cannot get through the other fingers when I'm holding gently, trying to get through. Now, if I say no, it goes right through. Now you try it. And so this is muscle testing. So I could say, do I have any trapped emotions in my body? Yes. Because it was strong, that's a yes. And I would say, is that trapped emotion in column A? Yes. Is that trapped emotion abandonment? Yes. Is that trapped emotion abandonment? Is it in my, and I can look at the chart, is it in my heart or small intestine? Is it in my heart? Yes. Do we need to know anything else? And sometimes we don't. Do we need to know anything else? Yes. Okay. Is it from my mom's side? Yes. Is it far back? Does it go farther back than 50 generations? Yes. And so you go on asking yourself, like, this is a trapped emotion that has been passed down transgenerationally, more than 50 generations, that is in my heart. And so once we figure out and go through these questioning of how much we need to know, and sometimes you don't need to know very much, you can just let it go. So once we get to a stopping point where you get the answer of, okay, I don't need to know anything else, then you say, is my body, or am I ready to release this abandonment in my heart? Yes. And then you can just simply say an affirmation: I release abandonment from my heart. I like to add a physical motion because you said it's really important to add physiology. And so I will add this like sweeping motion, kind of like aligning your chakras in your whole body, over starting from your root chakra over your head. And I would say, I release this trapped emotion of abandonment from my physical body, my emotional body, my spiritual body, and my energetic body. And I give it to God to repurpose and send me a positive emotion. And sometimes that'll come up just intuitively. It could be love or a different emotion. And then I just breathe and I set into it or sit into it. And then the final thing is then I ask, do I still have the trapped emotion of abandonment from my mom in my heart that goes back 50 generations? No. And you see how I got a no? That means it was released. If it's yes, then that means there's more work to do. Maybe you need to open up yourself. Maybe you're dehydrated. Maybe it could be a couple of things of why it's not released. But oftentimes it's as simple as an affirmation and a physical movement in the intention of letting it go. And it is so empowering, and you will find so many positive things in your life if you read this book, Release Trapped Emotions, because they can be regards to not just forgiveness or grudges. It could be you have a sinus infection. Like, well, what do you mean? I have a trapped emotion causing my sinus infection? Maybe. And that's what this book is all about. And I encourage anyone to read it because, like I said, if you don't release these trapped emotions, they're harvested into your body. And there's a couple books, The Body Keeps a Score and Feelings Buried Alive Never Die, are both books that talk about things being held in the physical body, creating physical ailments.
Yeah, Annika, that's what the healing code talks about as well. And so thank you for going deep into the emotion code and explaining that and muscle testing. I think you hit on something really important. You also mentioned that some of these grievances, some of these pains are not yours and could be coming from other generations. And maybe we have to spend a little bit more time on that on another episode. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that if you feel like you have jealousy issues or abandonment issues or worthiness issues, a lot of that did not start in this lifetime. And so when something does happen in your life that touches on one of those emotions and triggers you, it compounds the hurt and the trauma that's already there. And so you think, gosh, why am I taking this so hard? But it's because there's been a pattern. And the wonderful thing about each unique life is we can break those patterns, not just for us, but also for the generations back and for the generations forward.
Yeah. And how cool is that? Now you, Brittany, have a really cool practice. And I don't remember if our mom told you this, but tell everybody about the red tin, because this is a really cool thing that anyone can do. It doesn't have to be a red tin, but tell me about your red tin.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. So the little red tin. So a little bit of a backstory on this. I was going through a really hard time, which I tend to do, especially in my late teens and my entire 20s. And I had just recently ended an engagement that was not right for me. And he was horribly abusive and not a good dude. But I thought it didn't matter. I had some very disturbing thoughts about relationships, and I was in a deep depression, even though I knew this relationship wasn't right. And my mom and I actually didn't get along that great for most of my childhood and my 20s. And so I really pushed back on anything that she said. But I was in such a dark place. My mom was like, please let me help you. And I go, fine, you want to help me? Like, what? How are you going to help me? And she said, okay, I need you to take this pen and this paper. And she tore up this paper in like 20 little pieces. And she goes, let me know if you need more. And I want you to write down all the things that are bothering you. the individual you're engaged to that crossed you, if I did something that upset you, your father, even if it's about your siblings or the church or whatever it is that is so heavy and weighing down on you, you're going to write each one down and you're going to put a new one on each paper. I'm like, okay, well, this is going to take all day. And I did fill out several, I think it was like 20 pieces of paper. And she said, okay, now you're going to fold it up and you're folded up in tiny, tiny pieces and you're going to stick it in this red tin. And she took this red tin off of the top of the fridge. We grew up in a time where you kept your cereal boxes and your tins on your fridge. So she takes that down and she opens it up and she holds it out. And I put my little pieces of paper in there and then she closes it. And she goes, now that it's in here, it is no longer in here. It is no longer in you. It is no longer in your heart. You have now let go of it and you are no longer going to allow it to affect you. And I was like, but mom, I just put it down in a tin. And she's like, no, we are no longer allowing this to burden you anymore. And you got it out. Do you have anything else you need to get out? I was like, no. She's like, if you do, you let me know and I'll put it in there. And I said, okay, well, what do? We just sit this red tin back on the fridge. And she said, yes, we're just going to sit this red tin back on the top of the fridge and you're going to let some time go by. And one day you're going to want to know if you're still carrying these burdens. And you'll come back and you'll open the red tin and they will be gone. And I thought she was so silly. And what woo woo magic is she talking about? But I was desperate to believe in what she was saying. I was desperate to let go of this pain. And so I did what she asked. I tried to put it out of my mind. I didn't look at it. And one day, I think it was probably even just a few weeks, I don't think it was that long. I go, oh my gosh, the red tin. Like, what did I even write down in there? It had not been months. That's what's so crazy is this activity allowed me to let go of things that were haunting me and weighing me down. And it had only been a couple or a few weeks, and I had forgotten what these things even were. And so, of course, I rush into the kitchen. I reach on top of the fridge. I pull the red tin down. I open the lid and it's empty. And I just had this giant sigh that I no longer carried these burdens with me. And I put the lid back on and I set the tin on the fridge. And I can't to this day even tell you one of the 20 things that I wrote down because I no longer carried them. And my mom made sure that by putting them in the red tin, I was letting them go. So when I teach my forgiveness workshop, I give everybody a little red tin to do this exercise. And after you've done that exercise, what we normally do is either move through yoga, right? We got to move our bodies to help process and let go. Or we do a burning exercise where we burn the individual papers and a gratitude practice. Because after we like dump all of this out and all this heaviness, we need to counteract with a balance of some lightness. So after you burn the items that are, holding you back, the little pieces of paper, you then do a gratitude practice, sometimes with flowers, and that allows you to reinvite light into the void that used to be so dark.
That's so powerful. And I love that you implement it in your workshops and you give people red tins. Something that stood out to me was that sometimes when you've been holding on to something for so long, it's actually very scary to let it go because it's become a part of you. And it's kind of like, I don't know, like if you had to donate an organ, like it's very scary. That is a part of your body. And this is what happens when we hold on to grudges and emotions. We have these energetic organs, we have energetic cells, we have energetic and spiritual things that are inside our body, good and bad. And when we're letting go, it can be very scary. But what's so powerful about the red tin is, and I know you do a burning exercise if people choose, but you also don't have to. Instead of saying, I'm going to let it go and it's going to be burned up forever and I'm never going to get that piece of me again, even though it's not serving you, it's still scary. You can put it in the red tin, put it on top of your fridge, and it's there if you need it. And most likely you won't need it, but it's more gentle than like forcing yourself to get rid of something. It's just relocating that trapped emotion or that burden or that grudge. It's relocating it to a tin on top of the fridge that you can access if you need to or want to. It's not gone, it's just in a different place. But just the practice of writing things down is extremely therapeutic, extremely relieving. And you're right, if we're holding everything in here or everything in our mind, then it's going to create chaos, stress, burden. But writing things down is an act of getting it out.
This has been another episode of the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, subscribe and share the love. And remember the teachings of Lao Tzu. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Until next time, trust yourself. Take the wisdom, take the breath, and take the next step.